Hello, vinyl community. This is Mike with TCAT's Deep Vinyl Tracks, and it's time to do another King Crimson video. This one is number 7 in the series, and this is also their 7th album, which is called Red. To me, this is my favorite King Crimson album out of all of them. For a lot of people I know in the Court of the Crimson King, seems to be their favorite. But as far as second place for most people, it would be this one. I do know that a lot of people that love progressive rock tend to consider this one their best album. It's my favorite album because of the balance between structured and improvisational music. Seems to be perfect on this. You get a mix of both, and you also get to hear how the two of them work so well together. So, as we already talked about on the last segment, David Cross was asked to leave the band because he had a growing disinterest in the music. He was kind of like a person that, he felt like, personally for himself, he felt like he was being kind of shut out of the music, mainly because of Bill Bruford and John Wetton's louder, almost sonic blast. And even Robert Fripp started to complain about it a little bit, saying that his guitar was even lost in the heavy drumming and the heavy bass. But anyway, David Cross was asked to leave, so he left, but he wasn't informed until just before the recording of Red. So he does appear on a few tracks. You can hear his violin, and it's usually in the more of the live settings that are kind of overdubbed into the music. The record company was supposed to tell him of his being fired, but they forgot or neglected to tell him, and so it was up to Robert Fripp to give him the bad news. But anyway, the album Red tends to follow a lot of the heavy style that seemed to be prevalent in all of King Crimson's music at the time. And this one follows suit. It is also quite heavy, and one of the differences is it uses a lot more overdubs. The movement you see over here, that's Norman. So he might make an appearance. Anyway, many past King Crimson members were involved in making this particular album. Most notably Robin Miller on oboe, Mark Charig on cornet, and Ian MacDonald and Mel Collins both appear at different times on saxophone. And you can hear their input throughout the album. Fripp was starting to show disinterest in the music, so for this particular album, both Bruford and Wetton were having more input into the music and what was going on there. They wanted to ask Ian MacDonald to rejoin the band full time, but there was kind of disinterest in this. I don't know if Ian MacDonald wanted to just not do it at the time or what was going on, but there was a lack of interest. So instead, Robert Fripp decided to disband King Crimson altogether, and that happened 2 weeks before the release of Red. Red also experienced some of the worst sells that the band ever had on the charts, and it actually charted for 1 week in the UK, which was not very good for one of their albums. It has later, though, became one of the most revered and respected albums in King Crimson's lineup, and many consider it, like I said, their best album. It's highly influential to avant-garde rock, avant-garde metal, and math rock. You can hear aspects or like predictions of the music that's going to come from their music. Kurt Cobain actually said that it was highly influential to the album In Utero. So, here we go. Red, King Crimson, there's their lineup. It's the trio of John Wetton, Bill Bruford, and Robert Fripp make up this lineup as far as the regular members, plus a lot of help from other band members. That's the CD. This is the vinyl. And one of the interesting things about the CD reissue that this came from, it has the same spine kind of as all the others, so it matches that way. But the CD, instead of being the pink that it usually is black. No, it's not red, it's black. So, interesting choice there. However, the record label... Hello, Norman. Nice to see you. The record label has the pink that you see on the CD and everything else. So, interesting how they made that decision. The lineup now is Robert Fripp on guitars, mellotron, and pianette. John Wetton on bass and vocals, lead vocals, and Bill Bruford on drums and percussion. That's the main lineup. As far as additional musicians, you have David Cross on violin on the 4th track, and also playing some mellotron. Mel Collins is also on the soprano saxophone for the 5th track. Ian MacDonald is on alto sax for 2 of the tracks. Mark Charig is on cornet for track 2, as is Robin Miller on oboe on track 2. There are some uncredited guests. There's somebody playing cello on 3 of the tracks, 1, 2, and 5, and also a double bass on track 5. They don't know who it was, or at least there is no information on who it was. Apparently it was some session musician. So we have the album Red, divided up into 5 tracks this time, for a total of 40 minutes. Now, track number 1 is the title track, which is Red. It's all instrumental, and it's 6 minutes and 20 seconds, attributed only to Robert Fripp, as far as the person who wrote the track. It's a hard and heavy instrumental, and it's based around a guitar motif. You hear that motif throughout the beginning and the end of the track. Robert Fripp says it's scored for electric guitars, but is actually multi-layered for this recording into 3 layers, with Robert Fripp playing all 3 of the layers. Track number 2 is Fallen Angel. It has vocals from John Wetton, and it's 6 minutes and 3 seconds. It's attributed to Bill Bruford, Robert Fripp, and John Wetton, and also Richard Palmer James, who is still showing up to write the lyrics for the songs. Basically what the lyrics are about, it's a lament over John Wetton's younger brother, who joined a street gang and was later stabbed to death. some of the motifs were part of improvisations that were done throughout their tour. Verses are sung against a more laid-back mid-tempo beat, and there's some nice oboe and cornet additions to it. The chorus is a little more abrasive sounding than what the verses are, and there's a lot of emotion in Wetton's singing. You can hear the emotion, but the abrasiveness also comes out in his vocals. There's a lot of cool layering of horn and guitar in here, interacting with each other, and the cello comes in around the midsection of the entire track.
Spent on the streets of the city, make us the people we are. Switchblade stings in 1/10 of a moment. Better get back to the car.
Track number 3 is One More Red Nightmare at 7 minutes and 8 seconds, and it's attributed to both Robert Fripp and John Wetton. Again, there are vocals here. Richard Palmer James is not involved in the vocals on this one. It's all written by John Wetton. The introduction on this particular track comes from various different improvisations that were done, and it is the perfect indication of the heaviness of the track and almost a haphazard feeling about the song. Very chaotic sounding. Again, there's a heavy sound and it can be abrasive in parts, but there's some very interesting hand claps that are offbeat, especially in the midsection. The midsection changes the meter from a regular meter to a 7/8 meter, and the sax comes in about midway through this section. Bill Bruford's drumming is just very stellar on this particular track, as is Ian McDonald's saxophone playing. Track number 4 is Providence at 8 minutes and 8 seconds, and it's attributed to David Cross, John Wetton, Robert Fripp, and Bill Bruford. Its instrumental section derived from a free improvisation that was done at a concert in Providence, Rhode Island. David Cross was still in the band at the time, so that's why he appears on this track. And it's evident from the violin bringing the track in, which he is basically leading during that section. See? The avant-garde feel of the track, very very, like I was saying, it has a very avant-garde. I forgot where I was going with that particular sentence. Drums interrupt the violin and the bass interplay around 5 minutes in, and Fripp's wailing guitar joins in soon after that, as it becomes more intense as the track continues on. Track number 5, one that speaks for itself and has to be heard to believe, is Starless at 12 minutes and 18 seconds, attributed to David Cross, Robert Fripp, John Wetton, Bill Bruford, and Richard Palmer James. Now, David Cross is involved in this particular track, as parts of it were actually recorded for the album Starless and Bible Black, which was the previous album, but they took it out. Robert Fripp felt like it wasn't finished yet, so it was held over for this particular album. And since there was already a track on the previous album named after the title track, they couldn't use that even though those words are in the lyrics, so they just shortened it to Starless. I'm glad they waited on this, because they turned it into what I consider the perfect song. My favorite all-time number one track, if I can name one out of every song ever made, it would be this one. It's the perfect King Crimson track. Everything is in this track, lots of emotion, beauty, imaginative, it's improv, and it's got an amazing structure at the same time. Vocals and melody are astoundingly beautiful, with the sax and guitar trading off, meshing perfectly with the violin, especially in the first part of the track. The first section is vocal. It's set up basically like a basic pop song, except, I don't think you could consider a pop, but it has that structure. Just a beautiful, beautiful melody, and probably John Wetton's most memorable work out of all the music, all the vocals that he's done, especially for King Crimson. Going into the second section, it moves into the rest of the track being all instrumental. There's a perfect transition that happens going into the second section, and throughout the second section there's just this amazing build-up throughout the entire thing. The tension builds as it continues on, and it's in an interesting measure of 13/8. That gives it its strange feel, but actually just creates so much tension as it continues on. It just sucks you right in. And just as you think the second section is about to come to a climax and just explode, it kind of backs off a little bit and lingers for, I don't know, maybe about 20-30 seconds, and then suddenly just explodes into the third part. And it's almost a cacophony of measured music combining improv and structure at the same time. The timing is 13/16 at this point. And let me tell you, if you want to do a prog song, this is how you do it. It's not just something you throw together at the last minute. This takes a lot of work, a lot of work with the structured part of it and being able to improvise around that. Just amazing. the melody from the first part kind of interrupts the saxophone-led section of the last section, and then it kind of returns to the melody a little bit, then suddenly explodes again. This time Robert Fripp just shreds his guitar, and I can't even begin to tell you how just rewarding this entire thing is when you listen to it for this long. It's just, every time I hear it I get chills. I get very emotional about the entire song. It's just perfect. Then everything after this wild section, everything returns to the main melody, the instruments playing at this time, with a very solid chunky bass, and the mellotron. Just, oh man, I wish I could find the words to explain it, how wonderful this thing is, but it's just a masterpiece. But by the end of it, the song just soars to a higher plane than it ever has, just repeating that melody with the instruments. And anyway, can't say enough good about this. I can play you sections of it, whatever, but let me tell you, you can't really appreciate it until you hear the entire thing and just listen.
Sundown, dazzling day, go through my eyes, but my eyes turn within, only see starless and bubble glass.
So anyway, that's King Crimson's 7th album, Red. And 2 weeks before the Week of Red, of course, like I said, Fripp disbanded the group on September 25th, 1974. And with him saying that the group was going to cease to exist forever and ever. For him, it was done. We all know differently that it did come back together. Between 1975 and 1981, however, there was no activity with King Crimson. Everybody was on their own. All three of the main lineup had gone off on their own projects. However, with these projects and with the future King Crimson members, you can hear from their solo albums the direction that the music is going to go when King Crimson does reappear. Robert Fripp, John Wetton, and Bill Bruford would release their own albums and have their own projects. John Wetton, of course, would go on to form UK and then later form Asia. And by the time they did get back together again, John Wetton was too busy with Asia, so they searched out another vocalist who would be, of course, Adrian Belew. So when we get into our next section, is not going to be about a single album in particular, but it's going to talk about the first hiatus of the band and go over some of the things they released and kind of show you the direction the music was going to go by the time it would reach the next album, their 8th album. So that's what we're going to talk on the next segment. I hope you enjoyed this, and thank you for watching. We will talk to you all later.